I'm with Daniel Seaman, who used to be the director of the press office here in Israel, and we're looking back at the life of Ariel Sharon. Now, how important was Ariel Sharon as a leader in Israel?
I think there's no doubt that he was a towering figure. Some people liked him, some people disliked him. I think that if you have mixed feelings when people have mixed feelings about somebody, it means that he was decisive, and that meant that some people didn't like those decisions. But I think that is a tremendous quality in true leadership, is the ability to make decisions and move forward. And that's what Ariel Sharon was. If there's one image of Ariel Sharon, is that he was called a bulldozer, that he made a decision, he went and he followed through on it. And that is true leadership.
Now, he was a military man and fought in Israel's major wars. Do you think that led his politics?
I have no doubt about that. It's obvious that you can't go through something like that and not have it affect your character and who you are. And that's what made him such a brilliant military leader. Ariel Sharon was on par with major military minds throughout history. His tactics and things that he did are still taught in major schools, both in infantry. He was a commander of paratroopers, and also in tanks. He was a brilliant military mind. And so in that sense, if you place him on the world stage, absolutely. But he always said that what really affected was his early life as a farmer. That connection, that bond to the land, that understanding of the cycles. But I think it's basically a combination of both. He became a farmer after he was in the military, and he always saw himself as being first and foremost a farmer, but he was more than anything else, he was a military leader.
Now, was the settler movement important to him?
It was important to him, but anything Ariel Sharon did, whether it was his military career, political career, or even the efforts with the expansion of Jewish settling in the land of Israel, was his belief in what was necessary for the survival of the Jewish people in this country. And obviously, and this goes back to 100 years ago, even the UN decisions on creating the State of Israel. Wherever there was a Jewish community, that's where the Jewish state was. Where there was an Arab community, that's where the Arab state was. So that is still true today. And he understood that axiom, that we have to continue and strengthen the Jewish settlement here, because that will eventually determine what the borders will be once we reach a resolution with our Arab neighbors. So he understood that. Every concept for his was what is important for the state of Israel, and did these things in accordance with that belief at that moment. And this is probably leading up to, I'm sure you have this question of, at some point, he withdrew Jewish communities. And it just proves the point. At the moment that he believed that withdrawing Jewish presence from the Gaza Strip and tearing down communities, people think it's not a technicality. This was uprooting the lives of people who lived there for over 40 years, removing them from their homes, 3 generations of people who only knew that place as a home, and moving them out of there. It is not a simple decision. But at that time, he believed it was in the best interest strategically for the state of Israel. So Ariel Sharon, anything he did was based first and foremost on his understanding of what is strategically important for the survival of the state of Israel.
That was my next question. He did pull the settlers out of Gaza. Do you think that was a mistake? Because ever since, we've had rockets being fired into Israel, and of course we eventually had a war as well.
There are a lot of there are a lot of things said about that. It can go both ways. Obviously, people who believe that Israel needs to remove communities in order to have peace with our neighbors thought that was a popular move and a good move. But it's hard to tell. Only history will eventually tell. In the short run, it hasn't proven itself. In the expected result, which was we withdraw, it brings us closer to peace. What we had is obviously the opposite. Withdrawing from the Gaza Strip, there's only been it widened the area which was under attack. If only the Jewish communities in the Gaza Strip were under attack up until the disengagement, once we withdrew from there, instead of bringing the promised results of peace or peacefulness, it expanded the area, meaning that initially a third of Israel was under rocket fire, and after the operation a year and a half ago, you had almost half of Israel, including Tel Aviv, the major metropolitan of Israel. So in this question, when you see that happening, what was the benefit of withdrawing and then necessitating Israel moving in there again? But if you look at it from the tactical perspective, it does lead, this situation does give us a legitimate claim to the international community. If up until the Gaza withdrawal, we were required to take risks for peace, and this was said clearly by the President of the United States, President Bill Clinton, that Israel should take risks for peace. Today, these risks are not hypothetical. They are not theoretical. We know exactly if we need to withdraw from Judea and Samaria with some piece of paper that will promise us peace with the Palestinians, well, in the Gaza Strip, the PLO, who are our peace partners, were in control when we withdrew. Within a year, they were overthrown by the Hamas, who have no acceptance of any Israeli presence here, whether in Gaza, Judea and Samaria, or in Israel proper. Who's to tell us that that won't happen in Judea and Samaria? And second, you have the rocket fire and the violence. So in this case, for the average Israeli today, we are far more cautious about any concessions that Israel makes, and I don't think that it can be argued against. So we do have a legitimate case to raise concerns about what a future peace process will entail, and Israelis are going to be far more cautious. So in that sense, it does lend legitimacy to the concerns of the Israeli people. On the other hand, it didn't succeed because we're under assault.
Now, what legacy did Ariel Sharon leave Israel?
That's still for history to determine and still for time to see. But I think that the later life, his era as prime minister, we still is yet to be. The jury is still out. His earlier life as a military commander, I think it's unparalleled. Some people say that since the Maccabees, there has never been a military commander, a Jewish military commander at the a personality such as Ariel Sharon. He is a once-in-a-generation military commander. And he did save the state of Israel during the Yom Kippur War. It was his action of crossing the Suez Canal in a military maneuver that is still being taught. Sheer brilliance. He did resolve the terrorism that was coming directed against Israelis from Gaza in the late 60s, in the early period of immediately after the Six-Day War. And to be honest, he ended the military intifada of the Palestinians in the year 2004. The actions taken by Israel, led by his guidance and his military doctrine, which is you follow through without compromise. In a military battle, you go for victory. You don't think of how you're going to resolve things. You don't think of how you leave an option for peace. You think of defeating the enemy. I think more than anything else, Ariel Sharon's legacy is you fight to win. You don't fight to compromise. Yeah. And once you win, then you have the ability to seek compromises. And I think that's his legacy.
Now, how important was he at the establishment of the nation of Israel?
He was not the immediate, though he did fight with one of the Jewish undergrounds, with the Palmach. He was not one of the founding fathers in that sense. He was not. He was the immediate generation of the establishment of the State of Israel, and he rose to fame in that sense in the mid-50s when he created. Basically, he set down the doctrine for the Israeli military. Up until that time, it was a ragtag military, and with some support from Jews from around the world, military expertise such as Ord Wingate, etc. People who lend their expertise and knowledge to the Jewish community pre and immediately after the British Mandate. He was one of the first leaders of the State of Israel, and he started determining the military doctrine for the State of Israel. So in that sense, he was very important. He went through the whole process through the military, became a politician, became a leader of the State of Israel. So he does certainly have stock in the creation and of the initial creation of the State of Israel.
And you've served over many prime ministers. Did you serve under Ariel Sharon?
Yes, I was director of the government press office during his years as prime minister, and as such, it brought me into contact with him. I've served under 6 prime ministers altogether, and I remember his period very fondly.
And what sort of stories do you have of just working with him in general?
He was what was surprising was he was nothing that people expected him to be. He had a public image and public persona that was totally opposite of who he was personally. He is a far more gentle person than anybody expected. I've said I, who personally admired him for years, was very taken aback by his personality, which is very gentle, extremely intelligent, very cultured. He was a person who listened to classical music. He was very knowledgeable in many cultural aspects. That's one of the things I tried to convey to journalists. I think for many journalists who were honest, when they came, they could not be taken. It was not a situation that the journalist who met him was not taken by his personality, which is very different than what they were expecting. And that's a tremendous advantage for somebody dealing with public relations, to bring people and completely shake up their perceptions. And so that was I love that part about him. We had a fantastic interview with the London Times. That initially he had come into the meeting after I didn't know what he was doing all day, but obviously he was very preoccupied to the degree that somebody of his age lent the questions as he fully there. And I was thinking about, how do I spin this and how do I get this out there? And he was preoccupied, and while they were talking, we had half an hour and they were thinking about something and they were asking questions, and he wasn't really responsive, and he was drifting off. His thoughts were going someplace else, and I was very nervous for a while. And then on a brilliant move by the editor of the London Times, he talked about some pictures that were on the wall, and a very famous picture of Ariel Sharon with at his farm with a sheep on his shoulder. And just at that moment, Sharon just lit up, and it goes to the testimony to his feelings about being a farmer, how important that was to him. And we were about 10 minutes away from the end of the interview, which was, from my perspective at that point, a total catastrophe. And suddenly Sharon sort of woke up, walked over, and they started discussing the pictures, and started discussing farming and sheep growing and his bulls that he has. And from there it turned over, and it immediately just guided into the political questions, and it was a fantastic interview. Sharon was very pleased. They were very pleased, and just goes to show you, you have to, if you find the angle to this man, he opens up, and he's very generous person in his personality, and that's one of the best memories I have. Another memory is the fact that he was very supportive of his people, meaning he would back them up. He would be there for them, even if you'd made a mistake. He would follow through on things, check what the reasons were, but you never felt it was personal. He would never chew you out on it. If you made an honest mistake, if something happened and the result was not what you were expecting, if you put in a genuine effort, he backed you up on it. And it gives you a lot of confidence to know that you can, very much like him, you can follow through on something, you can set your sights on the goal, you can strive for it, and you knew that you had his backing, and that encouraged you to follow through on activities and not sit back as a bureaucrat and find all the reasons why not to do something. So his character was not only personal, it affected his surroundings. People around him, people who worked with him, knew that you are goal-oriented with Sharon. You go for it, and you don't have to be afraid of making mistakes. You just have to be afraid of not going for it. That's something he was unforgiving about. But when you made a sincere effort and you went for it, you had his support.
Now, what do you think the nation of Israel owes to Ariel Sharon?
In all honesty, nothing. Because a nation does not owe an individual. The individual owes, this is going back to the Kennedy, ask not what you can do for you, what your country can do for you. I believe that, and I'm sure that he believed it also. He did things out of his belief as an Israeli and as a Jew, that these things that obviously God-given gifts, he dedicated to the people of Israel. Individuals, I'm sure there are many individuals who fought alongside with him and feel that they have a personal debt to him. But I think as a nation, he was always a soldier. He performed his duty. So he was another person in the chain of great leaders who gave to this country, and he just made sure that the chain will continue.
Do you think there will be another leader like him?
as they say, the cemeteries are full of people who had no replacement. And they also say about the old soldiers don't die, they fade away. Sharon faded away. It took him 8 years. All I can say is, based on the history of the Jewish people, there will always be. He has his place in the pantheon of the Jewish people. He will always be remembered. Some people for better, some people for worse. But obviously, nobody can not think of Ariel Sharon. But as we've proven in the past, the Jewish people, as a people, are greater than any one individual. There will always be another leader will pick up the baton and continue with this. For the Jewish people, it's a race through history. It's not a, as we've proven, it's not something confined to one era or not. The Jewish people are eternal, and therefore there will always be additional leaders.
Well, Daniel Seaman, thank you very much for sharing your time about Ariel Sharon.
It's my pleasure.